So Alberto, thank you very much for being with me now. Alberto, you're the founder and CEO of V7. And can you please share a little bit more about your company, the size, what you do, so that we get a sense of who you are and why we should be listening to you as to the results you've achieved and how you've achieved them.
Super happy to be here, Matt. Thank you, first of all. So we're a 80-person company headquartered in London. This is an important point. We're a European headquartered company, so we maintain some of that part of the working culture. We're in the AI space. We started automating data labeling. A big part of our work began evolving in the world of document processing. And today we automate knowledge work, mostly knowledge work that relates to document processes and things that are done inside offices. And this transition also within the RLLM is particularly difficult for most AI companies that were founded before 2022. You had to revamp your entire tech stack. And that sometimes required taking the company back into early stage startup mode. Uh, should be for a temporary amount of time, but really it's forever. And convincing everyone that the future is just going to be reinventing ourselves every 12 to 18 months in a very radical way. And yeah, we took this concept of a war room to heart in order to establish this as a way of competing in the space of AI, where every 6 months you innovate or you evolve or you die.
Awesome. So let me take a step back. So you're 80 people, and there was a problem that occurred when we were coaching. You shared with me, hey Matt, the company no longer operates with the same intensity that it did when we were early on. And you were at that point all remote or mostly remote, or how would you characterize the company at that
We were
point?
hybrid. So a lot of our growth happened in 21 and 22 when companies had to found any tricks in the book in order to get employees to come to you. And a lot of our perks evolved into having a lot of flexibility, remote culture, being remote first. And over time, that started to work less and less for, especially for the go-to-market side of the company. Juniors didn't get enough time to learn and to adapt. And so over this period of time, our culture weakened, I would say. And the weakening of the culture happened in people spending fewer hours in office, people not, say, burning the midnight oil when it was necessary. Whilst at the same time, we needed to get back into startup mode and we needed to sometimes rewrite parts of the product from the ground up. And that requires this tremendous dedication. Um, and it's not I think in Silicon Valley it can be a little bit easier because you go to a party and everyone talks about what they do and their work, and really it is part of their pride. But in many other parts of the world, with V7 is headquartered in London, so a lot of our developers are there, a lot of our go-to-market is there. It's Work is sometimes a little bit secondary to what you do. And so how do we make V7 a rewarding place for the people that were really the zealots of it, that were burning the midnight oil, that wanted us to win and still want us to win today? And how could we maybe not be the right place for people that didn't want that and that wanted more work-life balance, and wanted a career that sustained them, but ultimately they were not going to look back and see their time building artificial intelligence being the most rewarding, but rather what they did on the side, what they did in their free time.
So again, awesome, Alberto. So to characterize it, you had lost. There was intensity that you had when you were first starting the company, when you were both remote and fewer people, and now you are hybrid, a lot of remote and many more people.
Yeah.
And you're saying that it's because we're in London, because we weren't in Silicon Valley. But I'm telling you, Alberto, this problem exists for every single company and CEO that I coach. And it has nothing to do with Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley has this exact same problem. And as soon as a company goes beyond 20, 30 people, as soon as it starts to go remote as well, this diffusion of intensity or dispersion occurs. And every CEO that I coach says, oh, I just wish we could have that same intensity we had in the early days.
Yeah.
And now, Alberto, you figured out a way to get it. So can you please walk us through? And for most companies, it's at 30 people seems to be the break point,
Mhm.
whether in person or remote. That's when it starts to fade. It fades harder if people are remote, but it also fades in person after 30. And so you're
Yeah.
now at 80 and still hybrid. And you're now having, what results are you seeing now? And how did you get there? So, first, entice us with the results that everybody craves. And they may not be perfect. I don't want you to
Yeah.
lie.
So numerically, and now we're recording this in January, so new year, new targets, new ambitions.
So,
But
January 2025.
January 2025, last year we were basically producing 40 to 45% of the pipeline that we needed to generate. Effectively, these are deals that we produce in a sales led motion. And this would lead us to a fairly catastrophic end of year result. After we've implemented these set of practices, we got up to 130 as a target. And that took less than 2 weeks. Then it got sustained and it stayed stable at about 110. So we're still over the expected target, which is pretty high. It's still kind of like a top tier VC backed growth target that you're implementing onto yourself. But it didn't require additional spend. It didn't require changes in leadership. It just required changes in me and my co founder in our expectations, and not in a dictatorial way, in just an
All
honest
right.
way about what it takes to win.
All right. So, problem,
Yeah.
people not having the same intensities before, and 45% of the pipeline we need. Solution, within 2 to 3 weeks of implementing something that costs zero, doesn't fire anybody, just changes the way that you and your co-founder operate, and you're getting now results of over 100% of pipeline consistently now for weeks beyond when you first implemented this. I
Yeah.
think everybody would want to sign up for that. Now, with that as the backdrop, can you please tell us what in the heck did you do and continue to do?
Yeah. We've implemented a war room practice, but not a war room of desperation, rather one of getting the entire company together in a virtual war room, determining what the beast is, the enemy, and in this case it was our low pipeline, and involving everyone in daily updates about what we're doing to solve the problem. These updates would happen at 9 a.m. with a stand up that involved everyone in the go to market organization. I know it's a little bit silly to do a stand up as a 70, 80 person company, but hold on that thought. And it had an open door to anyone in engineering and product managers and designers who wanted to see what was the problem that the company was experiencing and what can I do to help solve it. And we would have another one at 6:30. So this kind of defined working hours by default, that they would be a little bit more hardcore than our default. On top of that, we got everyone who lived far away from central London, where the main office is, to get free transport back home after hours, to get free lunch and dinner. These are small things, but they do make a difference, because they're saying that we're not going to leave in the lurch. We're not going to expect you to, you know, make a loss out of this, and it's a mutual loss. But this is going to be one of the most energizing times in actually getting to the target and the growth of the company that we expect. And
And,
so people, yeah.
and can you also define to us what a war room is? Like, what's the actual agenda?
Um, yeah, good question. So tactical preparations for it is you would just put up a spreadsheet, define a target for the day, which is usually a little bit higher than what you'd normally expect, and then allow people to add rows. In this case, it was sales qualified meetings booked for what needs to be achieved, and people then add them throughout the day as they achieve them, as they tick these off. And at the bottom, you see a tally of whether you hit the target or you haven't hit the target. And you'll see that, you know, if you're doing everything correctly and if people feel motivated by the initiative, then you're probably going to smash through the target each time, because the founders are looking at the target, because the whole company is looking at the target, and they're also celebrating the victories. So it's simply maintaining a tally of it and maintaining a feedback session in the evening for those that have overachieved, to share what worked out for them, and for those that underachieved, to share what they've tried, not really what hasn't worked out, because often you don't know really what you've tried and then for the overachievers to provide any suggestions either in DMs or directly within the stand up to help them get up to speed. So effectively, people are lifting each other up, which in sales cultures tends to not happen by default. People can sometimes even compete as a point of pride or simply because they're working in the same patch.
Amazing. All right. So you conducted a daily war room. In this case, the issue that you focused on was sales pipeline. And you simply had a spreadsheet where you had people fill in every day what they were adding to the pipeline. At the end of the day, those who succeeded, you celebrated them, asked them, what'd you do that worked? So they could share with those who didn't hit their targets. And those who didn't hit their targets could get mentored in real time, either in the meeting or in DMs and Slack, as to how to copy the success of the ones who were succeeding. And then any other person in the company voluntarily could join and watch these war room meetings, but wasn't required to be there. But the go-to-market team was required to be there in person, and you just paid for all their expenses to go there, to
That's
be
right.
in the office every day. Now, as I share this with other CEOs, all of them say, wait a second, how the hell do you get people to agree to do this? Like if I were to say tomorrow, we're going to have a daily stand up in any department, the entire department, that the department head would say, screw you, I'm quitting. I'm not doing that. I'm not having my team do that. How did you get the go-to-market team to do this?
Well, that's part of the intended course of action. If someone is going to quit because you're asking them to hop on a call at 9 and another one at 6 or 6:30, you might have your answer. That person might already be planning their next step. And in fact, I would suggest any founder that has the unfortunate step ahead of having to do layoffs to do them by simply amping up the expectations, and then seeing if there's any drop off from there. It's actually feels a lot better for someone to walk away from a challenge that has become too off from their lifestyle for them than to be actually laid off, which is quite a traumatic experience. And you can still give them the same level of generous severance that you would if they decide to walk away. And that's actually what we did ourselves. We set these expectations, and we set them in a way that could be as exciting as possible by thinking of the true V7 champions in mind. So the people that are really rooting for the company's victory, which is almost everybody. Every founder would like to believe that it's almost everybody. Um, and or I would say it's always everybody to my best of knowledge, until people decide, like, maybe this is not really for me anymore. And uh, and then we decided on a Friday. We announced it to the leadership on a Friday, and then we implemented it on a Monday. So it was not really, like, obviously the planning of it took some time. We needed to make sure people could easily book their meals, book accommodation if people were living more than an hour away from London. We actually got them to stay in the city. All of these are like expenses that come up, but they're really meaningless compared to the company actually being in fifth gear. Like there's nothing more expensive than the company being in third gear when it should be in fifth. And really the biggest asset that you have is the cohesion of your leadership team. So you would go to the ones that are going to say yes with this, and they got really excited. You go to the ones that maybe have more of a difficult situation because maybe they have a spouse at home that needs their support. And you obviously offer flexibility for anything that is outside of their control, but you communicate to them, this is our intention, and I need you to back me on this. And then you communicate it to the team. And if it comes from a unified leadership front, most of the time people are going to get pretty excited. And we started to get this feedback on Slack saying, like, I really like this. I'm so glad we're doing this. People started to change their status on Slack to like weapons, like, the cross swords to show that they were in the war room. And it really felt like the whole company's immune system came alive. And this immune system isn't just, a response to a negative action, but it also, when you have adrenaline in your body, you're really cognitive of like what your body is capable of doing. And it's quite similar in these situations where the company suddenly gets a spark of adrenaline because there is a threat outside of it. And it decides, or after, a week of this, you're like, wow, we really did this. And the secret is, we actually didn't have to work until so late. Most of the time, we hit the target by 5 p.m. and then we went over in the day in the hours to follow. And what really helped was not the intensity is a little bit of a Trojan horse. It is the implementation of best practices, of feedback, of helping each other out. With obviously the idea that you're going to be stuck there in the office until dinner time or after dinner time. So you might as well help each other out in getting out of this war room as quickly as possible. Which brings me to the peace terms. Like, obviously, once you start getting into the right rhythm and you close the pipeline gap that you have, you declare peacetime. That's your opportunity as a founding team to discuss, okay, what practices do we want to keep? What practices do you want to leave in like a wartime situation and not get into again? And that's your opportunity to bring a cultural change that the company has already experienced and beta tested. And like if the and you can also make it you can get feedback from the employees themselves about what they liked and what they didn't like, and you'd be surprised how many of your best performing people are going to say, hey, I really like this thing about like I'm going to stay. I mean, a lot of our youngest most ambitious people are, I'm going to stay late every time as long as you just buy me dinner. And this is a common practice in many companies, but like these are small discoveries that these experiences let you run, and then you can bring these forward as cultural changes that are already rubber stamped by the employees that feel like they're also building part of the company culture themselves.
Amazing. Alberto, I'm going to remind you of something because it sounds like, hey, to implement this, we just did it. And if people didn't want to be part of it, then that was a great indication that they shouldn't be at the company. And that's actually less traumatizing than laying them off. And we still gave them generous severance packages as they exited. But I'm going to remind you something that happened. What you actually did, at least what you told me, was that you said to the company, we're going to do this as a 2-week experiment, and that's it. And that seemed to allow people to go, okay, this seems crazy. This seems brutal, but it's only 2 weeks. I'll try it. And you basically got 100% participation, at least for that initial 2-week trial, because it was an experiment. At the end of the experiment, the results were already, from 45% to 120% of pipeline, I mean, wildly successful. And then you didn't know what to do. You're like, oh, shoot, I want to continue this, but I told them it was just going to be an experiment. And I said to you, well, if you want to continue it, continue it. And then you did, you went back to the team. And that's when some people said, now I've experienced what it's like, and I don't want to be part of it. And then that's when you experienced attrition, but it was the attrition that you wanted.
It was also some of the most, let's say, apologies, my English vocabulary is fooling me. It was some of the most, let's say, positively forthcoming attrition that we've had, because it was there was effectively a taster of what the times are to come, and there was a very, say, positive mutual separation of people with generous severance, with everything that we would normally give, but it didn't come out of a negative event like an underperformance. It really came out of a reflection that takes 2 weeks, plenty of time to think about something, and saying, hey, this lifestyle is not really for me. There's plenty of opportunities out there. Can you support me in this transition? And that's your answer. And I think you were very. I actually didn't think that we could do this sort of continuation of the war room, sort of like we're technically still in the war room, even if we don't know about that. And when we brought forward these sort of like peacetime terms after the 2 weeks, and we said like this is the new normal, by the way, it wasn't quite the same as war room. War room was 5 days a week in the office, mandatory. It was, we had this evening stand up every single day. The new terms is we ushered in a 3 day in the week mandatory office participation, which we didn't have before. But that was a much softer landing than going from hybrid to 3 days. So we went from 5 to 3, and that 5 showed people that actually being in the office when everyone is there, it's pretty fun. When the founders are there and engaging with everybody, when like everyone is having lunch together because there's Uber Eats orders coming in continuously, and everyone's in the same rooms. it really showed the best of office culture for that period of time. So the 3 days a week were a pretty soft landing. And
Amazing. So do I have this right? So the 2 week experiment was 5 days in the office, 100% of the go to market team. You have to be there by 9 for stand up, at 6:30 for stand up. We pay all your transportation and food expenses this time. After the 2 week experiment said, okay, that worked. We're going to continue, but now we're going to go into peacetime. Took feedback from everybody. Peacetime version is 3 days a week required in the office with stand up at 9, war room at 9, and still doing war room at 6:30 or no?
only during 1 week a month, we're doing this like intense pipe gen to sort of go back on the treadmill. Because obviously 9 a.m. is a very precious hour, and the people will have meetings on it that come from the eastern part of the world, some of the earliest ones. So it's only one day of the week, but we kept all the other practices. So we actually kept lunch and dinner vouchers. The expense that ended up being so small compared to the actual participation, and just the act of not having cliques in the office that always go to lunch with one another, but rather are eating the office main tables, and mixing ideas with one another is very positive. We kept the transport vouchers, reasonable ones, not daily transport with people that came from far away. We're like, fine, we're going to cover your transport. Anything that gets participation to be higher is most likely a worthy expense.
And what level of war room do you still continue? What cadence and what time?
We are now moving from uh, having one for pipeline, which continues. We still have this cadence. We're still doing next week. In fact, it's going to be our second pipe gen week. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
And is that, you said that was one day per week?
We're doing 1 week per month
What?
of really intense pipeline generation.
Okay, and so that's twice a day, 9 a.m. and 6:30, 5 days a week for that 1 week. What happens during the other 3 weeks?
The practice tends to continue, just not quite as intensely. So if you're
And
going
what
to
does not as intensely mean?
you're not expected to do say 130% of target every day. It goes back down to 100. It's a bit like going on a treadmill
But
and
you're still having the 9 a.m. and 6:30 p.m.
uh,
stand-ups, or no?
not during those peacetime months.
Okay, so if you're not having the 2 a day, what are you having during those peacetime?
They're simply reporting as per standard, like what gets booked every day, and they in this case it's the go to market team that does sales calls, so they'll use that time to actually close the deals that they're producing during this pipe gen week.
Is
Uh,
there any meeting at all that happens during those 3 weeks?
yeah, they're usually there's like recurring weekly meetings, but they're twice a day for the rest of go to market. So instead of being daily, they start being twice a day, and
Wait,
sort of
wait, twice a day or twice a
twice
week?
a week.
Okay, got
Twice a
it.
week. So
All right.
during pipe gen week or war room, it's every day 9 a.m. and 6:30, and you have nothing else on calendar. You're just focusing on battling the beast. On the other days, you might have customer calls, you might have some internal syncs, you might have feedback calls between, say, the solutions engineers and the account executives. So it starts to have more of these other activities. And having this weekly break every month also allows you to reflect that the utility of these recurring meetings the rest of the month. A lot of them tend to get eliminated over time because they're just chit chat and agenda pushing sometimes.
Amazing. Thank you for all that detail. That detail is important, Alberto, because the devil's always in the details. But really, as I listen to this, the key takeaway is you imagined something, you had a very specific problem that you needed to solve, which was existential. But whether there was an existential problem or not, every single department has an ability to level up significantly. And you first started with go to market and you said, what do I want? And you wanted everybody in the office, 9 a.m., 6:30 p.m. meetings, nothing, and everyone just focused on all that time on pipeline generation. And you said, let me do this as a 2 week experiment. You did. You said it to the go to market team. You then invited the rest of the team to observe if they wanted to. And after the 2 week experiment, the results were insane. You then said, okay, now what do I want to do on an ongoing basis? You listed that out, shared that with the team. Whoever wants to continue in this, please stay. Whoever doesn't want to continue, we'll help you find another job and a great severance. And several people did opt out, but in a much less traumatic way. And now you have the cadence that you want. 1 week of wartime pipeline generation, 3 weeks of peacetime, do everything else, the normal twice a week meeting, not the daily twice a day meeting. That
Yeah.
only happens during that 1 week.
We may
Amazing.
return to wartime at some point.
Yes.
But
Great.
like, I think it's still a muscle, so you can't really keep it strained all the time. But so far, this cadence has worked, and the wartime really helps level up the culture for semi-permanent amount. And so I suppose the follow-up is like, can you do it elsewhere? Can you do it outside of pipeline? Can you do it in engineering? Can you do it in town? Go ahead.
Well, actually, there's another follow-up even before then.
Mm.
You, as CEO, had to come in and run this new method. Now that it's being run and everyone sees the results and everyone sees how you did it, do you still have to be directly involved, or can the head of sales or the head of go-to-market run this as effectively as you now that he or she has seen how you did it?
I think after 3 days, you can start to delegate to your direct reports. Amazing rooster call there. So after 3 days of running the practice, and your job as CEO should be to make sure people are looking at what you're doing and then giving you feedback, and then, like you usually suggest, reversing that process and letting them take over. So that should always be part of the goal. Just your presence as founder and CEO in the meeting can often be enough. And day 4 onwards, when you're not leading the meeting, also allows you to be more supportive if anyone is getting bruised by the intensity, which can sometimes happen. Like, if you're going really intense and you're going 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week, if that's your level of intensity, then you may need to also do some triage and check in with the people and not just be the ringmaster all the time.
Okay. So you handed over the reins after a few days, and that continues.
On day 3, I handed over the reins. This was expected on running the twice daily meetings and on checking in with everyone about like what was wrong, if they were under target, or what was going really well if they were going over target.
Now that you've jumped into go-to-market, showed how to operate this, after a few days, said to your head of go-to-market, okay, now you can take over. They did successfully. You're still observing, but now it frees you up to now go do this somewhere else. Yeah. Have you done this somewhere else with another problem or another department?